this meeting to order. If you'd please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening. We welcome our guests. We encourage you to sign in the back to my left. You can also find copies of the agenda on the back table. And we do have some punch, cookies, and some coffee to my right. Please help yourself. Members present this evening are myself, Mayor Morrow, Council Members Gearboss, Seo, Camaro-Sulak, Mitchell, Delorco, and Councilwoman Dillon. From City staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Police Chief Hart, Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Wygowski. I don't believe Treasurer Bennett is here, Assistant City Manager Green, and Parks and Rec Director Scruggs, as well as DPW Director Fordyce. Excuse me. Thank you for being here. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
So moved.
Moved by Gearby as submitted, sir?
Correct.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Seconded by, was that Dillon?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we'll proceed to my charter-sanctioned State of the City address. Good evening, City Council, City Manager Campbell, City Clerk Royal, distinguished guests, and my fellow Saline community members. It is an honor to provide remarks this evening. As I've stated many times in the past, Saline is a special place. We're a community with engaged citizens, numerous resources, and a shared vision for Saline's future. Saline is thriving, and I know that great things lie ahead of us. As I stated in years past, increasing the economic vitality of the Saline community will remain a top priority for me and for the city in the ensuing months and years. Our citizens' quality of life is directly tied to the economic health and strength of our community. Make no mistake, quality of life and economic growth are deeply intertwined. Accordingly, a key component of economic health is thoughtful expansion and diversification of our community's housing stock. To this end, I'm proud of our efforts to assist new housing developments in our area, specifically Fairdine, Layer Farms, Cascade Point, Maple Oaks, Maple Cove, and Huntington Woods Phase 2 and 3, to name a few. However, the most significant development looming on the horizon is the Annalena Farms project, located at the cross-section of Michigan Ave and Austin Road, currently within the boundaries of Saline Township. As many of our citizens are aware, the City of Saline recently approved a settlement agreement with MI Homes, Saline Ventures, and it's clear that the city's approach on this matter produced tangible and unambiguous gains. The settlement agreement, which is the culmination of our efforts, is a win for the city, but more specifically for our residents. The agreement outlines two separate outcomes. The first would require the developer to upgrade their private utility system with an emphasis on treating chlorides and sulfates. The second option, which is far more ambitious, but is my preferred choice, would result in the Annalena Farms property being brought into the City of Saline. Utilities would be extended to the parcel, and necessary infrastructure upgrades, would be completed in the next 12 to 18 months, allowing the developer to sell units and have homes occupied by the final quarter of 2020. It has also been negotiated that the developer would contribute up to $5 million to assist with utility services. Finally, in order to execute the second option, several issues would need to be resolved, including a favorable annexation agreement with Saline Township, development of a firm construction schedule, timing of financial contributions with specific dollar amounts, along with a number of other issues. Annexation of this property is in keeping with the smart growth policy that I have been advancing for a number of years. Moreover, acting timidly or failing to take decisive action on Annalena Farms will not prevent or deter growth in our area. Instead, future generations will be beholden to private utilities for their community services rather than their municipal counterparts. Due to its significance, engaging the public on this topic has been a key priority. For example, Councilmember Gearbaugh did an excellent job discussing this matter at our recent community visioning session. It was the primary discussion item at my recent coffee hour with special guest County Commissioner Beeman. In addition, community update was provided at the most recent membership luncheon at the Saline Area Senior Center. In late December, my office submitted an op-ed to the Saline Journal on this topic, and information has been disseminated to adjacent property owners and local HOAs. If residents or other parties have concerns, they are welcome to contact my office. Last, we must think more holistically about growth in our area. We must plan for it and exercise as much control as is reasonable and appropriate. As such, I'm pleased that City Council approved a joint working group comprised of Saline Township officials and representatives from the City of Saline, including myself, Councilmembers Dillon and Gearbaugh, along with Planning Commissioner Bill Beardsley, to discuss and develop a broad annexation plan along our southwest border. I'm eager to get to work on this and present something tangible to City Council in the coming months. As I've expressed previously, our small business community is the bedrock of our city, and understanding their needs and supporting their interests is an absolute necessity. The city will host our 8th annual Small Business Summit later this year, along with our large business gathering. We are committed to presenting on timely and relevant issues to both groups. Because recruiting and retaining talent is of paramount importance to our local business community, this past November, the city organized and hosted our 2nd annual job fair entitled Find Your Future in Saline. It was a great event for both job seekers and employers. We are committed to improving this event, and we look forward to planning another job fair later this year. Special thanks to our city treasurer, business ambassador, Mickey Jo Bennett, for her leadership on this. Her efforts were noticed and very much appreciated. I'm also pleased to share that significant progress has been made regarding the sale and development of Lot 20A along East Michigan Ave, and City Council should expect to review a sales agreement for Lot 13 in the Reddy's Industrial Park in the next month or so. There is no doubt, transitioning these properties from public ownership to private, creating jobs and offering new services and amenities to the residents of Saline will benefit our community for years to come. Finally, on December 30th, my office sent a letter to Gunther Homes regarding their property at 147 West Michigan Avenue. Our community has looked upon this vacant, non-contributing lot for more than a decade. Frankly, that's long enough. This parcel occupies a strategic position in our downtown. A mixed-use project would be ideal, one that combines apartments, condos, with retail office space. I'm committed to moving this along and will do what I can to support this project. Transitioning now to infrastructure. The odor abatement project at our wastewater treatment plant was completed this past summer. City Council had discussed a community open house at our wastewater treatment plant, but considering some ongoing maintenance issues, specifically with the RBCs and Nova filters, it seems prudent to wait until the appropriate repairs are completed. We are working aggressively to get all RBC units back online and recently approved a settlement agreement with the manufacturer of our Nova filters, which is very advantageous to the City of Saline. In the meantime, if residents have concerns or questions pertaining to our plant, they are encouraged to call our wastewater treatment superintendent, Steve Wygowski, at 734-944-2003, or City Manager Campbell at 734-429-4907, extension 2211. Also, the future of wastewater operations will be discussed later this week at a special special council work meeting scheduled for Wednesday, January 8th at 6:30 p.m. here at City Hall. At Saline's request, Tetra Tech has completed a comprehensive analysis of this key function of city government, with recommendations on how to proceed in the future. We hope to expand capacity, but also better meet the needs of our existing utility users. Wednesday's meeting is open to the public, and interested parties are encouraged to attend. This upcoming construction season, the city will complete a number of resurfacing projects, including 2 initiatives we had hoped to start in 2019. But due to the lack of bids, they will commence later this year, 2020. Those streets are Keveling Drive and River Oaks Boulevard. The city will also complete projects on Mills Road and Woodland Drive, running from the intersection of Textile Road to the entrance of Davco in our industrial park. The city and our subcontractors completed additional sidewalk repairs in the northwest quadrant of the city this past fall, and will continue working on our comprehensive sidewalk program later this construction season. This program, once completed, will resolve nearly 100% of the deficiencies and defects that exist in our sidewalk inventory. As we proceed, those affected residents and business owners will receive a written communique from the city. But in the interim, if any of our constituents have questions or concerns, they should contact our Department of Public Works. I'm delighted to announce that the City of Saline has received a $40,000 grant from the Washtenaw County Connecting Communities Program to design and evaluate the feasibility of a non-motorized pathway, a river walk, spanning the length of Mill Pond Park, and allowing us to leverage our greatest natural asset, the Saline River and our mill pond. This initiative will take several years to complete, but it's an important first step. Additionally, receiving financial support from Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation, a county entity that the taxpayers support, has been a key priority for the city. And with our advocacy, I'm glad they are supporting recreation and connectivity in the Saline community. This past spring, the city hosted 2 visioning sessions for our rec center. Not only were they well attended, but we received excellent feedback from community residents and rec center patrons. The city will be organizing a follow-up discussion on January the 15th at 6:30 p.m. here in City Council chambers. A press release promoting the event is forthcoming, but we strongly encourage public participation as we consider what changes and improvements would enhance the viability of this valuable public resource. As I state every year, our first responders can rest assured that we will provide them the resources they need to effectively serve and protect the residents of Saline. Both the Saline police and fire departments are well managed and on strong trajectories, under the leadership of Chief Hart and Chief Heft, respectively. I am very pleased that the Saline Police Department is adding another full-time officer and additional dispatchers to the department's roster, allowing for more staff flexibility and a higher police-to-resident ratio. The medical marijuana work group, under the leadership of Councilmember CO, has completed their research and analysis, and their final report will be forwarded to City Council. And actually, their report has been forwarded to City Council, excuse me. A formal presentation will take place on at the February 3rd City Council meeting. I look forward to the discussion and thank all those community members who provided feedback or completed the group's questionnaire. Later this spring, City Council will consider and subsequently adopt a general operating budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. Our constituents can rest assured that we will exercise the same fiscal prudence and strategic thinking that we have utilized in this past decade. As our fund balance grows, we will continue to prioritize the city's infrastructure and legacy costs, specifically retiree health care and pensions. Additionally, Council is eagerly awaiting the results of a recently approved compensation study, which, once completed, will be a valuable resource as we begin the budget process and establish long-term objectives for our community. The city will also continue implementation of the 2019 organizational review with an emphasis on improving operations and more effectively meeting the needs of the people we represent. In that vein, streamlining bureaucracy and reorganizing certain functions of city government will remain a personal priority. Later this year, I will be asking City Council to approve the transition of the Code Review Task Force into a permanent city board or commission. This group should meet on a fairly regular basis and must remain an outlet for the city to improve and/or reduce the regulatory burden it places on our citizens and business owners. Further, the Oakwood Cemetery Task Force, first established by my predecessor, Mayor Driscoll, should potentially be merged with our Cemetery Board of Appeals, creating one cemetery committee. This may eliminate certain redundancies and create more cohesion. Also, for some months now, I've been working with a local expert on risk mitigation and reviewing, strengthening our local policies and internal safeguards. Issues involving risk assessment and emergency planning are of critical importance, and I hope to establish a risk mitigation working committee before the end of the second quarter 2020. In keeping with a promise I made this past July, I have emailed a number of community stakeholders to begin discussions on resurrecting the community-wide planning initiative of the late 1990s. This is a matter I began evaluating during the second half of 2019, and as I stated this past summer, issues involving growth, inclusion, transportation, transit, housing, and human services are not just city issues. They affect the greater community. Therefore, I believe a broad coalition must be established to resolve long-term and systemic problems that challenge our region. Affordable housing, income-based housing, will be a priority for the city and City Council during the upcoming calendar year. City Manager Campbell and I recently met with representatives from the Washtenaw County Office of Community and Economic Development to discuss this issue, and much, but not all, of our conversation focused on duplicating the success of Mill Pond Manor, located on the campus of EVH Senior Solutions. Further stakeholder meetings will occur, and community members should expect updates in the near future. The City of Saline will continue to proactively communicate and solicit feedback from the people we represent. We encourage our residents to connect with us online and on social media and download the free See-Click Fix app to their smartphone or electronic device. On January 8th, I will be participating in a live stream interview with the Saline Post. I'll be discussing the State of the City address and responding to questions and concerns from Saline residents. If you'd like to participate, please log on to the Saline Post this Wednesday at 2:30 p.m. If you're unavailable but would like to ask questions or share ideas, you're encouraged to email the editor, Tran Longmore, in advance of Wednesday's interview. To conclude, I want to acknowledge the years of service and contributions made by my City Council colleagues. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome our newest members, James Del Orco and Kevin Camara-Sulak. I'm confident that City Council will be strengthened by their ideas and their energy. I also want to thank our very talented and committed staff who care deeply for this community and provide world-class service to our residents on a daily basis. I also want to acknowledge one of our newest employees, Mr. Mike Green, who is heading up the new Community Development Department and also serving as Assistant City Manager. Welcome, Mike. We expect great things. Finally, as city leaders, we will lead this community forward based on principles and the power of our ideals. We have a vision, a focus on economic development, investing in vital public services, and pursuing best practices for organizational efficiency. But our community's greatest asset is our people. And as I've said before, Saline is great because of the character and commitment of our residents. And as such, I continue to believe that our best days are ahead of us. Thank you, God bless you, and may God bless Saline. Mr. Fordyce, would you mind welcoming His Honor Judge Simpson into council chambers? I believe he's in the lobby there. And we'd like to transition now to the swearing in of incumbent Councilmember Jack Seo and new council members Kevin Camara-Sulak and James Del Orco. Your Honor, sir, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you for being with us. Are you ready? Indeed you are. Why don't you come forward, Judge? Do you want to assist Clerk Royal?
I'm going to give him the computer.
Okay, very good. The cordless mic is there for your pleasure, Judge Simpson.
The cordless mic?
Yeah. I know, well, that's...
Here's the warden.
Oh.
So Mr. Del Orco first.
Okay. So, Mr. Del Orco, if you'd like to come forward, if any members of your family or any friends would like to join you up front.
And then you want to hold the microphone up further up from the base.
Like that? It's because I used to do movies and... Sure? All right. You ready for this?
Yep.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right.
So you're always ready?
Why do you step back? I'm not going to bite you. All right.
Trying to keep everybody.
Oh, okay. All right. Real good. Hey, you're the important one, right? Oh, you do. All right. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, James Del Orco,
I, James Del Orco,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will perform faithfully
and that I will perform faithfully
the duties as a member of City Council
the duties as a member of City Council
in and for the City of Saline,
and in for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw,
County of Washtenaw,
State of Michigan,
State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I believe Kevin is next, Your Honor, and
All right.
again, if any of his family and friends would like to join him up front, that would be wonderful.
All right. How you doing? Ready for this? All right. And it's Camaro-Sulak, is that right? All right. Repeat after, raise your right hand, please. Repeat after me. I, Kevin Camaro-Sulak,
I, Kevin Camara-Sulak,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties as a member of the City Council,
the duties of the City of
as a member of the City Council,
member of the Saline City Council,
in and for the City of Saline,
and for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw,
County of Washington,
State of Michigan,
State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God. Congratulations.
I think I know this guy. Raise your right hand. I, Jack Zio,
I, Jack Seal,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully perform
and that I will faithfully perform
the duties as a member of the City Council
the duties as a member of the City Council
in and for the City of Saline,
in and for the City of Saline,
County of Washtenaw,
County of Washington,
State of Michigan,
State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Okay, good, because the screen blanked out.
Your Honor, let me shake your hand. Yes, sir. Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Same to you. Best wishes for 2020. Congratulations to our friend, Councilmember Seo, for being sworn in for your third term, and congratulations to Mr. Del Orco and Mr. Kevin Kamara-Sulak. We look forward to working with you, gentlemen. Moving right along on the agenda this evening, we come to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion.
Moved as distributed?
Moved by Seo to approve as distributed. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by, was that Mitchell?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries. Did I miss that? No, okay, okay. Ayes have it. My apologies, I passed over the citizen comment period, so we'll do that now. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess. I noticed on the last meeting, there was Lodi Township rezoning of 7706, and I was wondering, since you've had the meeting, I was wondering what the council, what happened and what the council's reaction is. Also, since it is an island, and we have quite a few islands in the city, has there ever been any thought about bringing them into the city with the Boundary Commission? Because I know years ago, they do not favor islands, and they are receptive to annexation of those. The other thing is, as far as the city concerns with our water and sewer, and I know it was very good as far as the proposed or possible annexation, I would hope as a city resident and taxpayers that our problems with our water and sewer plants, especially our disposal plant, will be addressed and taken care of first before servicing others. And there's government time and there's real time. And government time takes a lot longer. I know that. And you read that the new annexed property, if it's brought in, that we would possibly service them in 2020, and we don't even have a plan yet. So I'm hoping that the council would assure the city that we shall have our problems addressed first before addressing the servicing of the Angelina Farms in the next year. Thank you.
Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items? Then moving on, we have new business item 20-06, appointment of Mayor Pro Tem for 2020. This will be a motion to appoint Councilmember Gearbaugh to serve as Mayor Pro Tem for the year 2020 and to appoint Councilmember Seo as the presiding officer in the event that both Mayor Marl and Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh are absent.
Move to appoint and appoint.
Moved by CO to appoint and appoint. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Kamira Sulak. Well, let me just say briefly, since this is my motion, I'll stand behind a correspondence I sent to all of you towards the end of the year. I put a lot of thought into who I select to serve as Mayor Pro Tem, because in the unfortunate event that I become incapacitated or unable to serve, I want somebody who will be able to step into the position and effectively manage and lead city government for at a minimum a finite period of time. So based on his experience and knowledge, I think Mr. Gearbow will do an outstanding job. And as was, well, my custom as of the last couple of years is to also appoint a second designee in the event that both the mayor pro tem and mayor are absent. That happened, I think, on 2 occasions last year, so it came in handy. And so I'm requesting that Mr. CO serve in that capacity for the upcoming 12 months. Any discussion or comment on the motion? It's been properly moved by CO, seconded by Kamira Sulak to appoint. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to the discussion portion of the agenda. First up is reports and other announcements. Let me mention one, and I messaged on this at our last meeting in December. So I received consensus to move forward and give a verbal indication that we were willing to participate and financially contribute to this Washtenaw County book. Okay? I have requested an invoice from the individuals involved in that initiative. I've yet to receive that, so no check has been cut. You'll also recall that we were able to select pictures for that book, and I also inquired about messaging because there's a narrative on each page. And I wanted the ability to veto or to proof the message or the narrative that went out about the Saline community. So I followed up subsequent to our last meeting in December and was basically told if you'd like to control the narrative, you can write it. And so I did. And so I wrote both the narrative for the inside of the book and for the back dust jacket, because as you recall, we're getting customized jackets for each book. And so I said, well, there should also be another opportunity to message about the Saline community. So the clerk's office reviewed the narrative that I wrote, as did our former colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Tahar. I would ask that tomorrow you email those two narratives to City Council just so that they have it for their reference. And I'll note that I was restricted on how many words I could use in both narratives. I think it was like 100 for the first and 75 for the second. So it had to be abbreviated. As it relates to the pictures, some pictures were dropped off today, and unfortunately, it's not conducive to copy them and send them electronically. So there's a pile of about 10 pictures in the clerk's office, and what I'd ask each of you to do before now and the close of business Wednesday, you could even do it tonight if you want, is take a look at those pictures and rank your top 3, 1, 2, and 3, because it's very likely that we'll have at least 3 pictures of the Saline community in the book. So does that make sense to everyone? Okay, all right, very good. That's it on the Washtenaw County book. Let's transition then. Are there any commission, committee, or task force reports from council members? Councilwoman Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to note, because of the holidays, our Historic District Commission meeting will be held a little bit later. It's on Wednesday, I believe that's the 15th of this month. Yes, indeed, Wednesday the 15th at 7 p.m. right here. Thank you.
Very good. Any other commission, committee, or task force reports? Councilmember Seal.
It's just a reminder to all the citizens that this coming Sunday, both the Saline-Lunenburg Friendship Group and the Saline-Brecken Friendship Group are having their annual meetings right here in City Hall. Lunenburg goes first at 1 o'clock. The Saline-Brecken Group goes second at 3 p.m. So we would encourage anybody who's interested, and we welcome all citizens in the city of Saline and in the surrounding area to attend if you're at all interested in getting to know more about either one of those two groups. It's a wonderful way to get involved with sharing in the cultures of a couple of our overseas sister cities.
Very good. If there are no additional committee, commission, or task force reports, Mr. Wygowski, an update on the wastewater treatment plant.
Good evening and Happy New Year. I believe you've all received my wastewater treatment plant update. So I'll take questions on that in a minute or two. I just have a couple other quick items. I did solicit estimates on the fence along Mrs. Armbruster's property from 4 vendors. I had only received one that would come out and give a quote over the holidays, so I just received that today. So I will give, I have 8 copies here. I'll pass them up to you.
But for the record, you're hoping to get additional bids.
Thank you.
I will get additional bids, and with some direction on how we want to proceed, I can get the best price if you so deem me to do that. So while you're handing that out, so basically I had construction fence come out and walk the property, and the end of Mrs. Armbruster's property drops down a little bit. So it's difficult to say how tall of a fence would need to be there to block the odor control equipment. That's the biggest question. So I had them provide 3 quotes. There's an existing 6-foot fence there, and that's the first quote would be just to install the material that goes in between the slats that can be various colors and blocks out, I think they say, about 80% of the light and the view. The second option was to add a 2-foot extension on the top of that and install the same type of slats. And the third one was to add a 4-foot extension on top of the 6-footer and add the slats up there also. So even with that being done, I'm not sure that would completely block the view that Mrs. Armbruster has. But the quotes for the 6-foot section was $900, that's just the slats. The $2,100 was for 8 feet of slats plus 2-foot extension, and the $3,750 was the 10-foot of slats plus a 4-foot extension. So I'm looking for some direction on how you might want to proceed. I'm not sure if anyone has been out to the property to actually see what that looks like.
If I may quickly, and then I'll transition to Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh and work my way down that side of the dais and then catch the other end and end with Mr. Councilmember Delorco. I mean, our next council meeting is a week away. I would be interested to see if between now and next Monday, if you could get a couple additional bids. My inclination from having been out there, I think option 3 is the only one that's going to produce tangible results from the homeowner's perspective. And I think that cost is relatively nominal if it holds up compared to some of the other bids you might receive. So I guess I would be partial to pursuing option 3, but I'd like to have, very seldom am I comfortable making a decision based on one bid.
Sure.
I'd like to see at least a few more.
Okay.
Mr. Gearbaugh.
As we look at this, I'm concerned about the other property owners that run along the length of the waste treatment plant. Do we have any idea how many linear feet that would end up being?
This is for a 40-foot section only, so it's nearly $1,000 per 10 feet, so it's a lot of money. Some of the properties, I'm not sure which court it is, it's kind of confusing from my viewpoint at the wastewater plant which court is backing up. But as I'm looking at Mrs. Armbruster's house over to the right, the fence there is maybe 40 feet below their line. So, you know, it's impossible at the fence line to bring something up. It would have to be back on their property. This is the only complaint that I've received about the site.
I just want to make sure that if we do proceed with this, that we also verify with the other neighbors that they don't necessarily want to see
You know, I don't want to throw out a number, but at this price, I mean, there's several thousand feet of fence line.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor that we need to have additional bids on it, but, I mean, part of my thing is wanting to understand exactly what it's going to look like, so if we end up doing something this, we might want to do a mock-up to see what an additional 4 feet on top of that fence is going to be, so that we don't commit to something without the individual that's had the most concerns about this.
You know, I do have some concerns also with it being at the top of, at the edge of a hill, that by going up farther, if there's going to be stress that causes structural problems with the fence.
Okay.
So I'd like to get a couple more professional estimates out there to see if that's feasible.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
Councilwoman Mitchell.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you so much, Mr. Rogowski, for looking at this. I am also interested in the other neighbors because I think it's important that we're not treating one resident different than the others. And I too, I can't remember. I've been to Mrs. Armbruster's property, and I cannot remember what the side properties. and what their view is, but I would second that suggestion to check in with them and look. It'll be an expense, and this is probably less than what landscaping would be.
Yeah, so I have a question with that. Would you like something sent out to the adjacent property owners as far as their opinion on that? I guess I'm looking for direction on what you're looking for.
Right, so first of all, informing them that this is being looked at, and then secondly, offering them an opportunity to comment or equally request similar fence lines.
Okay, and I know some of those properties, like I say, due to the topography, it's not feasible.
Right.
And another thing to keep in mind is this is a seasonal issue. When there is foliage, for the vast majority that I'm aware of, you can't really see anything through that. It's very well developed and mature. So you have the winter months basically that you can see this.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And then I guess I just wanted to ask a question about easements. Or maybe that's a question for the city manager. Do we know about easements? Is there a ordinance against a fence that tall?
So one, it would be on city property, but
Oh, okay.
the ordinance does allow, I believe, up to 12 feet. If I could, Mike? It's 12?
Yeah, I'll double check tomorrow, make sure the zoning correlates with that.
Right, because it's a city facility that is adjacent to a neighborhood. I believe it allows, but we will confirm it, but
Sure.
I believe it allows up to a 12-foot fence.
Okay. And then I'm the last thing, because I am a gardener, I'm thinking about, it's on the east, it's facing east, right? Is that correct?
Well,
Trying
from
to-
my viewpoint, it's facing north, so from, I believe it's south from Mrs. Armbruster's property there.
Okay. I was just concerned, we're going to build this fence, but then I don't want there to be a kerfuffle about, is it blocking too much sunlight, or, I just want to double check that kind of detail with all of the residents who might have that sightline, who might possibly have a fence.
Let's do this, if I may. Excuse me, Councilwoman Mitchell. Unless there's objection from the dais, I think Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh's suggestion and Councilwoman Mitchell's suggestion is indicative of a best practice. I think sending some sort of written communique to other properties that abut the wastewater treatment facility or grounds would be appropriate, communicating two things: letting them know that this is under consideration, and giving them the opportunity by providing your contact information for them to weigh in and offer sentiments.
Okay, perfect.
Any objection to that? All right, then we'll proceed without objection. I'm sorry, Councilman Mitchell, do you have anything further?
No, thank you, Your
Yep.
Honor.
Councilmember Kamara-Sulak.
Thank you, Your Honor. I had the privilege of having the tour of the facility just not even 2 weeks ago. And you were very thorough. I appreciate that. Just a couple things. When we get the next bids, or was there any discussion on how much more it would be per, if we were to go the next neighbors, some economies of scale, if we, how much more it would be per foot or 10 more feet over that 40, and that's one thing. And second would be, that's kind of a hill there, and the wind. I remember the wind was pretty strong going towards the homes. Obviously, it would have to be a pretty strong fence, and it's. I don't know how much erosion happens there. I would hope that whatever company, if we were to go with, would make sure that it's a good depth and solid, especially if it's going to be that 12 feet. This is obviously a big.
Sure, and I think what they were looking at was putting posts within the existing poles to raise it, as opposed to putting a new fence in. It would be much more expensive to do the new fence. So as you go up to 12 feet, that wasn't really considered. I'm not sure if that's
I hope the strength would
feasible
hold.
from a physics perspective. And there's not much erosion on that hill because it's planted with grass and trees and that, and then the root structure is holding it in. But there was some concern by our arborist about, the idea of putting trees in there. He wasn't comfortable putting them in on such a steep slope because of that factor.
Yeah, okay. I would just hate for us to have the wind kind of push it
Absolutely.
into anybody's yards after we go through all of that.
And the higher up we go, the more tree trimming would need to be done because most of the properties have trees overhanging one way or another. So the price would probably go up linearly as we go higher too. There's going to be much more tree trimming.
All right. So do you think with the other bids, we could find out how much more it would be? There should be some cost
There should,
benefit.
there should be some reduction with the mobilization on that, and I'm sure more companies would be interested in bidding on larger jobs
Right.
if they can handle that.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Dillon?
Thank you. Let me just start, just for clarification, so the fence, the existing fence is on the city's property, correct?
That's my understanding. yes.
Okay. Because does Mrs. Armbruster have a fence on her side also, though? Doesn't she have a
No,
picket fence?
she has several outbuildings there, but no fence.
But no fencing, okay. So then, the longevity expense of the fencing falls to the city. All responsibility for the care, the maintenance,
Correct.
and the upkeep, meaning if there were any sort of failure of that fence and it caused property damage, would lie to the city.
Correct. Or any shearing of the material in there due to
Right.
branches and that would be our expense to repair.
Okay, I guess, I just wanted to go back to what the mayor had just said. I'm reluctant to solicit feedback from residents until we know whether this is even a feasible solution for us. I think we have to make some baseline decisions and then say, okay, the city has deemed this to be the best avenue to pursue. Would you like to be involved? Because right now, I could see you want a 6-foot fence, you want a 10-foot fence, you want slats, you don't want slats. I mean, this could just become a buffet of expense. And I'm a little concerned about that right now, when we don't even know whether this is going to actually solve any problem. We're just sort of hoping that it is. I know that Mr. Gearbaugh had mentioned maybe some sort of a mock-up where we can see from different vantage points if this is even going to make a difference. We all know the height of that equipment on site, and you can put a 30-foot fence there, you're still going to see that tower.
Right.
And so I guess, at what point are we saying this is enough of a blockage? And it's going to meet satisfactory of both, the city and the residents. So I'd like to just sort of establish that as my baseline first, and whether it means that we all need to take a field trip and sit out there with some blockage so that we can see from different vantage points of, because it's going to be different whether you're in the property versus sitting on a patio outside, at the fence line. So I guess I just want to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest, because I don't want to do a quick remedy and realize that it's not going to be satisfactory.
So just real quick, Councilwoman Dillon, just so that I'm clear. So hold off on sending a communique to adjacent property owners until we have additional bids and perhaps a mock-up of what our options are.
Correct.
Okay. Seems reasonable. Anything else, ma'am?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember CO?
Yes, sir, thank you. Although I've been down to the wastewater treatment plant several times in the recent past, I've never paid that much attention to the fence issue. So I'd like to make another visit with you sometime this week, if possible, Steve, to come down and look personally to see, what all's involved there. It seems to me for these prices, if we could put some kind of a living, evergreen buffer in there, that would work as well. I do know from my work in the radio system that anytime you add anything in something like a woven fabric, like that fence material, you're greatly increasing the wind load on that and tremendously changing the way it reacts to the weather conditions. So
Sure, and with the trees, Mr. Bennett, our arborist, came out and he deemed that the steep slope of our property to the fence line was not conducive to planting evergreens there.
Even if we planted them further in on our property line?
Well, it falls down on our property, so we're losing the height the farther we get on our property.
Okay.
Anything like that would have to be planted on Mrs. Armbruster's property, maybe 20 feet in, and that would probably take care of that. But that's not on our property.
Yeah. No, I'd like to firsthand see what it looks like down there and get a little better idea of what I'm talking about.
Mr. Del Orco?
The type of fence that exists there now is basically cyclone fence, that diamond-shaped pattern fencing?
It's a cyclone fence with a barbed wire topping to it.
So how tall is the barbed wire that goes above the is it 6 feet with the barbed wire?
It's 6
or-
feet without the barbed wire
Okay.
and maybe another 12 to 18 inches with the barbed wire, and that's angled.
And what type of material are they proposing to weave in between the spaces?
I think it's a fiberglass material,
Okay.
a flexible fiberglass.
That would be resilient to the weather conditions and last
Yeah,
for, did they
I'm
give
sure
an
there'd
idea
be
of-
some color fading over time, depending on how much sunlight it gets, but it's pretty weather resistant, yes.
Okay. I think I would agree with what Mayor Morrow said previously, that anything under 10 feet is not going to satisfy Ms. Armbruster, and it's not going to satisfy the complaint that there's unsightly things to see if you're in one of those houses that abut to this property. That being said, it's important to discuss with these other companies as they come out to give bids, in their professional opinion, what would provide a structurally sound fencing if we were to go 10 feet tall. Yeah, I just don't think that anybody's going to be happy with anything less than 10 feet, and it's probably unfeasible to go higher than that with it still being structurally sound. I do think it's important to make an effort to solicit input from the neighbors, as has been said by many of my colleagues. But I tend to agree that we should kind of have an idea of where we're going with this before we send out that information. And that's really all I have.
Very good. Let's do this then. Let's hold off on that letter until, well, at the earliest, I think we would send it out would be after our next meeting, so a week from Monday. In the interim, I think it was Mr. Seo's comment, I'd ask the city manager to reach out to city council members tomorrow and ask if there's anybody who would like to come on site to look at the topography and the slope to get a better understanding of the issue at play here. Between now and next Monday, you'll also solicit some additional bids. If there's anything you could provide by next meeting in reference to a mock-up or design or sample building materials, I think that would be beneficial. Okay.
Sure, sounds good. So I think one of the things coming in the property, it's really difficult to assess from our property what it looks like from the homeowner's property. We can walk up to the top of the hill and look, but we're lower than that level. So if any of you are interested in coming out to Mrs. Armbruster's property, we could contact her and get permission to come and see what she's actually looking at. And one of the things that, really the only thing that would be useful is to take a 10-foot pole out there and hold it, on the ground where she could see the scrubber and see if you can still see that scrubber above that. And if you can, then it may still be a problem for her.
Okay. Well, my understanding was the scrubber is obviously it has significant presence in terms of its size and height, but I think there was a desire on behalf of the petitioners. I think the petitioner was also looking to provide some sort of screening and buffer from some of the other technology and equipment that was on site. That was my understanding.
So I believe a 6-foot fence would take care of all of the other stuff except the scrubber.
Okay. All right.
So, I mean, there's a simple solution for the RBCs
Right.
and the other equipment by just putting slats in the existing fence.
Right.
To do the scrubber is 8 feet enough, is 10 feet enough, is 12 feet enough.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you'll report back a week from today, and Mr. Campbell will send out an email inviting folks to providing some times that you or your staff might be available for them to come out and look at the the property line and the topography and the slope as was referenced moments ago. Anything else you'd like to discuss reference the wastewater treatment plant?
One quick thing, if I may. I really like the idea of making an appointment with Mrs. Armbruster and having of what it would look, somewhat what it would look like, 6 foot, 8 foot, 10 foot, so that she would have some perspective on how much of a solution it's going to be. Because obviously, it's not going to take care of the whole view, and she'll feel that we're trying to satisfy her, her view. I think it's a really good idea, so that we can see, she can see from her property.
Ms. Dillon?
Thank you. I'm sorry, one last question. About the slats, is there a noise associated with them? Are they going to make a whistling noise, or are they going to make a flappy noise, or are they going to, once again, produce?
I'm not an
And I
expert.
guess my question is there a way that you can ask the construction companies
Sure,
about this?
I can ask. I've seen them at various, commercial facilities. I've never noticed that, but I'm sure if the wind's blowing in a certain direction, you may have the noise factor.
Because there's such a wind presence there, I want to make sure that we're not swapping out one issue for another. And it's, okay, well, we can't see it, but now we can hear it. And so I just want to make sure, because I know with other types of technology in those slats, there's definitely a whistle attached to it. And so I'm not sure what type of material they use, or if there's a newer technology.
Okay. I'll see if I can bring a sample of the material next week.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anything else about the wastewater treatment plant?
Yeah, unfortunately. The Nova filter, we've had the one down with the grinding noise, right? Well, the other one went down Friday afternoon with similar grinding noise. I've contacted Nova, asked them where we are in the progress of getting him shipped out. So he's going to get back to me. He's been pretty good. He'll probably get back to me tomorrow to let me know whether there's a possibility of taking the one good bearing and putting it on the other machine with the good bearings, so we have 2 good bearings in the meantime, or what the timetable might be for getting those units shipped out and repaired.
Any questions?
So both of the filters are down now?
Both of the filters are currently down. We are meeting our permit, but as the summer months come and we get more stringent limits, it'll be more difficult.
Especially if a heavy rain is to befall us.
Yeah, and the main thing in the summer is that we have more restrictive limits. So you're allowed to discharge more during the winter months than in the summer recreational months.
I see.
Anything else, Mr. Wagowski?
That's it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
thank
your
you.
time this evening.
I'm sorry, I just have a question about your report. If you could just, water hardness seems to still be kind of an issue. And I've noticed that you said you've made some adjustments.
Yep.
Are you getting better readings? Is the resident who's doing their own readings getting better readings?
So the resident, I went out there twice and got 2 values. I did the analysis and reported that to him. He was going off a chart
Okay.
that he got somewhere. So I made an adjustment. We have a blending valve, so what's coming out of the RO units is about 0 on hardness. And 0 hardness is not desirable because the water feels slippery and it's corrosive to the pipes, similar to what happened in Flint. You start drawing minerals out of the water if you don't have anything in there. So we blend some of our water that goes through our iron filters, or the sand filters. We blend that in to get a mix of about 100 parts per million is our goal. So I lowered that blending valve to get less of the hard water coming in with the softened water. So we're between 80 and 100 the end of last week, and I'll go out and do another measurement now that it's been in the system a few days. So we should be right on target. Okay. The plant was designed to put 100 parts per million out into the distribution system.
Okay. And then the other thing you had mentioned was the wastewater pumps, plural, that are down.
Yep, and that's at the water plant.
Right.
And yeah, those are about 15 years old, and they're the original pumps, and and they failed, they froze up, and the valves there were real corroded also due to that reject water from there is very hard because all the water coming in is softened, so the hard water is concentrated, and that's what's discharged out to the stream, and we're permitted for that. So those parts were pretty corroded, so we ordered valves, new valves, and new rotating assemblies for the pumps. We didn't have those on hand.
Okay. And so pumps like these, are they part of our CIP? Are we, like, do we have a system in place where we're monitoring them to where we're checking their longevity before they actually die?
They are, but we expected to probably get more time than the 15 years on that, but they should have probably been on the list that they could
Okay.
fail soon, but, you know, it depends on the use of the pump, how long it's running, what it's pumping, how long it's going to run, but, yeah, these pumps this is the first time they've failed since the plant was built.
Okay. Are they inspected on a regular basis?
Yeah, they're ran frequently. They run all the time when we're backwash our filters and when the reject water. So they were running, but on inspection, the one shaft froze and the other one was probably running too much, and that had some corrosion problems. We had a valve that wasn't seating properly, so the one pump was kind of pumping it into the other. So when that happened, both of the internal assemblies are shot. The motors were replaced about 3 years ago, is my understanding, but the pumps themselves are just rusted out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification.
Last question, Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just a clarification, when you mentioned you measured the hardness of the water at the homeowner's residence, did your results differ than what theirs did?
Those are my values I gave him.
Okay.
So I went out and sampled the water and came back and tested it. And we made up some new reagents, some fresh reagents also. And so we were reading a little high. So probably the measurements I was giving were probably 20 milligrams per liter higher than they should have been.
Okay.
But then we also did the reduction, and that's when we came down. And like I said, I don't want to get too soft to water because there's going to be problems and a lot of soft water complaints.
Definitely know, I experienced that with my failure of my water main in my house,
Okay.
so,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rogowski.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, do you want to provide a brief update on the implementation of the organizational review? And then mention briefly the Lodi Township issue that was referenced during the public comment period.
Certainly, be my pleasure. So right now, there is no change and no update, but we continue to move forward, or will be continue to move forward with our succession planning committee that I reported at the last meeting. I was planning to have that scheduled prior to Christmas, New Year's, but that did not happen, so we're pushing forward with that here in the near future. Reference the Lodi Township rezoning. Council may recall both the Planning Commission and the City Council made recommendations to Lodi Township to not rezone the property. And so I attended prior to Christmas. I attended that Township Planning Commission meeting. Their recommendation to the Lodi Township Board was to deny it. And so I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe it's supposed to be on the agenda for tomorrow at the Lodi Township Board meeting for consideration of the recommendation from their Planning Commission.
Any questions for the city manager? There are no additional items to be brought up under the discussion portion of tonight's agenda. Then we come to the second public comment period. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time, make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments?
Yes, as far as Ms. Armbruster, I was on City Council when that subdivision was built, and it was sand. I mean, it was like a sand dune. And when they built the homes, the rains came, and there was sidewalk above the dirt, like way up there. The erosion in the back was terrible. I think that you should have a topo of what the drop is, because it could be as much as 40 feet. But all I know, I don't really, I'm just saying it's a lot. And one of the concerns was the light. I think that's on the disposal plant. The light comes into her home, and I think there was a request of maybe having a hood over it to where it wouldn't, but that's as I recall. I was wondering, would somebody, I think that the Lodi Township request is important. Is there anyone from City Council going to the board meeting of Township tomorrow night, or had they thought about it? Thank you. And the last thing, of course, was asking the council the reassurance that we will be having our disposal working before we have to commit to Angelina Farms as far as in 220, because I think there's a paragraph in there that says if we don't have the plant done and we don't have connections, we'll do some kind of carrying or something to discharge, take care of their homes. And I would like, I think it's justifiable to have the assurance as a city resident that we are assured that our disposal plant will be online first and how we're going to pay for it. Thank you.
Are there any additional citizen comments on agenda items? Well, let me respond to some of those questions, and I think this might be about the 21st, 22nd time I've answered this question, so I'll try to be very, very clear and articulate. There are some ongoing maintenance issues at our wastewater treatment plant, but overall, our wastewater treatment plant and our water plant operate quite well. And I think we do a pretty good job of providing exceptional water and sewer services to the residents and business owners of the city of Saline. But as I've stated in the past, I'll state again tonight, and I'm sure I will state numerous times in the future, our existing utility payers, our existing utility customers have always been and will always be our first priority. We are committed to, as I said in my speech tonight, we are committed to finding better ways to provide services, in particular water and sewer, to the residents and property owners of Saline. I don't know how I could be any more clear on that. If you have questions, I'd be happy to discuss it subsequent to tonight's meeting. Is there any other business to come before Saline City Council tonight? Then please note our upcoming meetings, and the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:03 p.m.
So moved.
Moved by Gearboss, seconded by CO. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned, and please stay around for a picture. And if you'd like to vote on those aerial photos for the Washtenaw County book tonight, that would be marvelous.